Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a lovely Monday. And today we are going to be talking about accredited curriculum. This is something that trips up a lot of new homeschoolers because, of course, they're concerned about using the right program, not breaking the law, making sure their kids can get into college. Remember, I talk a lot in these videos about how that tends to be kind of the overarching fear a lot of new homeschooling families have, is their kid getting into college, right? So all of these concerns often culminate in this belief that you need to use accredited curriculum, and that by doing so, you are somehow ensuring that you're teaching your kid all the right stuff, you're going to get them into college, you're not going to get in trouble with the law, all these things. However, the answer is no. You do not have to use accredited curriculum. The last time I checked, which was fairly recently, there was not a single state in the country that required you to use accredited curriculum. And the more and more popular homeschooling gets, the easier it is for homeschoolers to get into college, even with very unconventional homeschooling experience. So, for example, and I talked about this in a previous video too, families who unschool, which means basically not using curriculum, not using classes unless the child wants to, and just learning through life, okay? Even those kids are getting into college. They're definitely not using accredited curriculum because they're not using curriculum at all. So what I want to do first of all is break down, what do we mean what does accreditation mean? Accreditation is an ongoing process, okay, that usually applies to actual physical schools. There are certain standards that are set by certain accrediting boards. And by the way, accreditation is not a national standard, okay? There's not one national accrediting board. There's like 12 or something like that, different accrediting bodies, okay? And they all have different standards. So it's not like if you see a school that's accredited, that does not mean, oh, it's being held to some national standard. It means that they have met or exceeded certain standards that are set by a certain accrediting body. And there are regional accreditation organizations, there are private school accrediting organizations, okay? So accreditation has to do with these standards that they set. Only a few of those standards have anything to do with the actual curriculum. Again, because they're talking about a physical school, it's often things like safety and the staff and like what kind of training they have and certification that they have and things like that. Oh my eye, sorry. And things like, technology and student body stuff and blah, blah, blah. It's all these things that apply to physical, traditional, conventional schools, okay? So why is it then that we see accredited used as a label on curriculum? It is because somewhere there is some accrediting body that has decided to work with curriculum. Now, just because there's an accrediting body that does that does not mean that that particular body has any kind of authority or any kind of, foot in the door with like colleges and things like that. And also, a lot of these programs that say they're accredited are actually created by physical schools that have accreditation. So their curriculum is accredited as part of this whole school that's accredited. And so they say, oh, our curriculum is accredited. Well, it's accredited because it's part of a school that was accredited, okay? And one quick side note on this whole accreditation thing, not even every public school is accredited. Many aren't. Accreditation is actually a very expensive process that you need to go through. When I taught elementary and middle school, actually it was 1 year in each of them that we were doing our accreditation stuff. And it was a pain in the butt. Oh my goodness. So a lot of schools don't do it because it puts a lot of added work and stress on their staff and their teachers who are already overworked. So a lot of times they don't even want to do it because it's such an ordeal. So just because a school is not accredited does not mean it's a subpar program. And just because a school is accredited does not mean that they are some super standard, they've hit some wonderful standard. It just means they've hit these particular standards that this particular accrediting body thinks are good. Okay? So this whole idea of accreditation, when you see it on curriculum, means really very little. The one place where it can be important is when you are trying, and I shouldn't say when, as if you're always going to do this. If you decide that you want to re-enroll your child in public school, particularly high school, it can sometimes be a little bit of a struggle getting the school to accept the curriculum you've used or the credits that your child has already accumulated at home to allow them into the classes that they want to take. Okay, you can see why this would be like a high school level thing, right? Because now we're looking at transcripts for college, and there's, in order to be placed in this class, you have to have taken this class. Well, then they say, okay, well, this class that you took, what was the quality of that program? What did they go through? What did they learn? Blah, blah, blah. So if you think you are going to put your child back into public school, that is the one reason that you might consider accreditation, using a program that claims to be accredited. Now, here's the thing, though, is that you would need to talk to your district or whoever, the school or whoever that would be, and say, okay, I'm looking at this program. If I do this program, will you accept these credits? The other thing, too, is that it is not that they will not ever accept homeschooling work that was not accredited. That's not true. Quite often it has to do with, quite frankly, it quite often has to do with the particular principal that you're working with or the particular superintendent. Unfortunately, some of those people can be very negative towards homeschooling, and they just don't want to give you any kind of in. And so they sometimes make the hoops harder to jump through than they really need to be. And this is one of those times when it would also be good to be a part of an organization like hslda.org, which is Homeschool Legal Defense Association or something like that. And they specifically work with homeschoolers to help them with legal issues and things like, okay, I'm trying to enroll my child here and they're claiming that they can't because they've been homeschooled, okay? So that is literally the one time that you might actually want to consider using accredited curriculum, is that if you know, okay, once my child hits high school, we're putting them in, okay? Well, then in that case, when your child gets up into middle school, you'd want to go to the school and say, hey, in 2 years, I'm going to be enrolling my child and I want to make sure that they've got what they need. Here's the program I'm thinking of using. Would this be okay? Okay. Now, this takes me to another little side thing that I want to mention, and that is that a lot of families, when they start homeschooling, they kind of have like one foot in the homeschooling world, and then they kind of want to keep like another foot in the public school world, just in case. Well, if we ever have to enroll our child, we want to make sure that they're on grade level, that they've been learning the same things as the kids, their peers, that everything we do is going to be accepted. Okay, I'm a forward thinker. I'm a planner. I'm the kind of person who wants to make sure that every eventuality, every possibility is accounted for. Okay, so I completely get that kind of wanting to make sure you've kind of got all your bases covered. Here's the problem with that, however. When you do that, when you kind of straddle both worlds, it means that you're not giving your all to homeschooling, and you're holding back the kind of experience that your kids could be having by trying to keep up with what they're doing in public school. Remember that one of the main reasons, chances are, that you're homeschooling is because you don't like what they're doing in public. So one of the things you kind of need to do is decide, okay, homeschool is going to be our thing. And at least until this particular grade, we're not even going to worry about public school. We will do whatever we need to do to make homeschooling work. so that you can give homeschooling your all and you can make it something that is what your child really needs, instead of working from a place of fear of, oh, what if we do this public school thing. So you need to make sure that you have very clear in your head, what are our intentions? What's our long-term here? What are we planning on doing? Because once you have that clear, it can make it a little easier for you to figure out, okay, so that means in the now, between now and this particular time, we can fully give ourselves to homeschooling. And then when we start getting closer to that time that we know we want to put our kid into public, we can start planning for that, okay? But this whole idea of like kind of trying to keep one foot in each camp can get very dangerous, because it just holds you back from giving your child that full homeschooling experience that may, over time, make you realize, oh my gosh, the last thing we want to do is give this up. This is so awesome. Why on earth would we put our kid into public school, right? So that's something that you definitely need to think about. And we have a question here. How hard is it to do a transcript once the child hits high school? This 1 foot is this 1 foot in is what I'm doing, and that is so hard. Oh, I totally understand, Melody. It is so hard because you really it messes with your head. You're constantly freaking out. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing doing a homeschool transcript? Not hard at all. Seriously. I know the high school thing seems so overwhelming. Don't get overwhelmed. It is so much easier than you realize. It really is. And I can say that with a fair amount of confidence, regardless of what state you're in. So yeah, honestly, the whole transcript thing, I know it sounds, and I think the reason it sounds scary is because we think of it as being so official. And we think, how on earth can I, as mom at home, put together something so official as a transcript? Well, it's because when you're a homeschooling mom, you are a principal. You're not just a mom. You are a school director. You are official. I know it feels weird because no one's like given you a certificate and said you are now an official, whatever. But really that's true. You are a school administrator when you homeschool, essentially. And so the paperwork that you create, the records that you create, the transcripts that you create, they're official. They really are. And that is it's not difficult to create those. There are loads of templates online. There's lots of guidance on how to calculate credits and how to create your transcript and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, it is not the big scary thing that you may think it is. So if that, for any of you, Melanie, obviously, because she's the one asking a question, but any others of you that are out there watching this, if high school freaks you out because of everything that's riding on it, and because there's all of this official sounding stuff like transcripts and diplomas and all this, I want you to release that. I do not want you to feel like you have to freak out about that, because you don't. You really don't. Okay? Should we keep a transcript for middle school? No, you don't have to do that. Middle school doesn't really count. However, lots of homeschoolers will start high school work in 8th grade. You can actually do that. If you've got an 8th grader who is fairly advanced, you can actually start doing high school work in 8th grade and actually do high school over 5 years instead of 4, which takes a lot of pressure off the kid also, right? Now they don't have to do all of those high school credits in only 4 years. You can spread it out to 5 years. That's a doable thing. So if you have a child that's kind of, that is, able to do something like that, wants to do something like that, even if it's just a couple classes, you don't have to start like all of their classes, but particularly if there's a class that they have more, or a subject that they struggle with more, you could start that in 8th grade, and you could do their whole freshman year's worth over 2 years. So you could go a little more slowly and really get things, particularly like, I'm thinking like math, okay? Not great with math. Take that Algebra 1 really slowly over 2 years. That's a great way to do that and relieve some of that pressure. What is the difference between cyber and homeschool? I will actually post a really good article in the comments for this, for you on that, Mindy, that I just wrote and put on my website just a few weeks ago. or months now, I think. But anyway, so going back to accreditation, I think I'm ready to wrap this up. I'm trying not to talk so much, y'all. I'm sorry I make my videos so long. I love talking about this stuff, as you can see, so I tend to ramble. Okay, but accreditation, the bottom line, true or false? It is false that you need to use accredited curriculum. No, you do not. And if your child ever wants to go to a program, to a college or a trade school or, a cosmetology program or something like that, and they're saying, no, your child, you didn't use an accredited program. That's when organizations like HSLDA can step in and be like, yes, they can, because look at the state requirements. Nothing here says that you have to use an accredited program, okay? So if the state doesn't require it, other people can't really require it either, because the state's not telling you have to do it. So thousands of people aren't going to do it. So for a program to say, oh yes, you needed to do that, it's kind of illogical, right? So there are workarounds for that. And there are organizations like HSLDA and other homeschool liberty organizations that will come in and help you fight for those things. But honestly, there are so few programs like that. There's so few places that say, oh, you need to use an accredited curriculum. You will have no problem finding an alternative, college or program or whatever. I think I've literally seen I've only heard of one college that required using accredited curriculum, and it was one of the state level colleges. Well, just don't go to that college. Seriously, there's zillions of them. You don't have to go to that one if that's really a problem. You know what I mean? So hopefully that takes some stress off. Melanie, you're saying that the videos help you. I'm so glad. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to know that. Hopefully this one is helping those of you who are worried about accreditation. Also, you realize you can let that go, which means it frees you up to be able to find just the right curriculum for your child instead of having to just look at these few programs that claim to be accredited. And again, let me just remind y'all, if the thought of trying to find that curriculum freaks you out, because that is kind of the big part of homeschooling, right? That's kind of the core of it, is the program that you use. And if you don't have the right foundation from which to build on to find that right curriculum, that's when you end up spending all this money and wasting all this time on stuff that doesn't work. If you want to avoid that, and you want to make sure you're starting with the right program the first time, and that you're setting a solid foundation on which to launch your homeschool adventure, then please check out my Acuity links, schedule a homeschool exploration call, and we can talk about coaching options to see if there's an option that I have for you that would help make all that much easier. Okay? Hope you all have a wonderful night, and I will see you later. Take care.